I can't thank you all enough for coming in and so many of the regulars and tonight a lot of new folks. So that's really terrific. And this is I believe our eighth year we're starting off tonight. So that's
Wow.
that's really fun. And in fact, seeing Ed was one of the very first people to present when we were at a bar where you could hardly hear. I mean, no
I
lie. It
remember
was a
that.
it was a bad screen. It was, the whole thing was bad. And but for some reason, we still remain friends. So I
Yep.
appreciate that.
Yep.
And whenever I
Yeah,
see,
yeah.
I start to cringe a little bit. But then, I appreciate that you did it that night. God Almighty. So that's really great. And like I said, I'm thrilled that everyone's coming. One thing I just want to make everyone know on February 5th, we're doing something different. It's called we're having it's I'm calling it supplier night, where we're going to have three or four, maybe four or five people who work within the industry who supply the industry. Somebody who has an online art gallery, somebody who has an app for estimating. And other things, someone from Blur Books is going to be here just to tell us what they do and how that could fit into what you're doing. If you need help doing an online book, you need to do an estimate, there's an app for that. So we'll have these different services that will do quick 10 to 15-minute pieces on what they do in their industry and how that could help photographers. So just so you know that, and that's coming down the pike in a bit. But tonight we have three terrific presenters. We first have to thank Photo Shelter, Pro Photo Daily, Epson, and American Photography for always helping us out. We do ask everyone, especially the new folks, if you could subscribe to our YouTube channel, which Jay will put the address in the chat room. And tonight we have Liam Sharp, Margo Cooper, and our first presenter is Robert Levy. So with that, Robert, you share your screen and off we go. Again, thanks to all.
Yeah. First, I'd like to say thank you very much, Frank. It's a real honor to be here, and I very much appreciate it. I have been in photography. I'm not sure if it lives somewhere between a passion and an obsession, and I do drive my family crazy with my photography and my constant having a camera with me or two. But I prepared a short 6-minute video before I make my presentation, so Jay, if you want to run that video, make sure your speakers are on. If you want to run that video, then I'll share my screen after you completed the video.
A friend asked me to take a ride with him to photograph some of his trailer parks. He owns hundreds of them. He wanted feel-good images for his office walls. I wanted to capture and present reality. I didn't want people to think I was on a people safari, but in truth, I was. I was an outsider with a camera trying to be welcomed as a trusted insider. How far from the truth are the white trash caricatures of trailer parks as depicted by Hollywood media? We saw 8,900 homes in dense shared community spaces, densely packed with non-existent privacy. Strong, tightly knit communities living on the edge of devastating hurricanes, floods, and dreadful fires. I saw the people who made up these parks. They were diverse, some there by choice, some as their last resort. They were caring to careless, loving to loveless, loyal to adulterous, inquisitive to carefree, working class proletariats far from affluent, trustworthy to conniving and adulterous, religious to godless, prideful to prideless, hardworking to lazy, young to old, transient and settled, guarded, hiding, visible, healthy, active, some wheelchair bound and some with rickets. I saw multi-generational families, parents, grandparents, children, grandchildren, aunts, uncles, nieces, and nephews. I saw satisfaction, contentment, trust and discrimination, due care and neglect. These people were practicing the same daily rituals and routines found in every other community. Working, cooking, doing laundry, gardening, collecting toys, playing sports, keeping pets, hobbies, adorning for and celebrating holidays, and even thieving. Also enjoying modern comforts and technology. There were incongruities. Values of the cars versus homes. Trump signs on the homes of those who he promised to deport. Homes dwarfed by palm trees, radio towers, power lines, and shipping containers stacked nearby. Imbalance of oddly materialistic priorities. Overspent, underinvested. Serendipitous. I learned to leave preconceived notions at the door. I rapidly had to go with the flow. There was no script. I had to deal with life as it happened. Seldom explored, seldom seen, never presented.
So, Robert, before you start, give us a sense of what, how this idea came to you to
Yeah.
document this.
So I have a friend who, as I said in the video, who owns loads and loads and loads of mobile home parks, and he was building a new office building, and he asked me if I would go and do a tour of these parks with him so I could photograph them so he could hang them on his new office walls. And I said, yeah, I'm not missing this opportunity. So he and I flew down to Miami, and we did about a 320-mile or 380-mile tour of about 32 parks. And we were there for about 3.5 days, up and down the East Coast and then over to Tampa. And we flew through these parks. But what I saw was amazing. The parks, the people, everything about it was just fascinating to me. And I just clicked and clicked and clicked. So I really enjoyed the project, and it was one of my first projects. I did this in 2016, and it just became a piece of work, a series that I did that actually to this day remains an important piece to me, and the pieces still resonate with me. So I look at the book. As photographers, we take photos, and we look at them when we take them, and we like them. Most of them, we like them, and then a while later, we look at them and we go, "What the hell were we thinking? That's crap." But this work, actually, a lot of the photos still resonate with me, which indicates to me that there's something to these photos, and I particularly care for them. My friend Jim, he wasn't too thrilled with them because what he wanted was a series of photos that made him feel really good. And he deserves to feel good because he's very generous, and he's kind, and he's heartfelt towards his communities. But I was looking for something different. And these images are 6 feet by 9 feet, printed on metal in his office building. And he really wanted to look at them to feel good. And I wanted to show the reality of the park. Now, there was some good. There was a lot of really good, but I mixed it up with a full range of feel good to the not so feel good. The reality of mobile home parks. So that's really it. But what I did learn from the moment we walked into the first park was that I had to be quick and nimble, and I had to photograph very, very quickly. And there was no script. You couldn't just like here, pose there, and get your shot set up. So I had to really be nimble and photograph them as I saw these opportunities. And in the first park we were at, we were standing there looking at this old sofa that was sitting outside. And I'm going, boy, I got to get a photograph of that. And as I'm preparing my camera to take the shot, this bird flew right between us from left to right. And I was very fortunate that I got this photograph because it is one of my favorite photos. But it really helped me because the rest of the journey, why isn't it? I'm trying to advance these, and yeah, there we go. So one of the parks that we went to a couple days before we got to that park, this woman's house, she had lived there for years, and her family lives in the same park, had burnt down with all of the contents of her house. It were completely destroyed. And she was still warm. I mean, the embers, you could feel the embers and the heat still emanating from this house. And it took minutes for this house to go up in fire, and it was very, very sad. But she was still warm, and she was very, very happy that she was going to still be able to live there. And the insurance company gave her $2,500 to buy a replacement home. And I assume she did. And she's probably still living there. She's lived there for a very, very long time with her family. But it was very sad to see this. But she was there, and she was present. She was happy to talk to us and see us. One of the things that I saw was that everyday life exists in mobile home parks, from everything you can imagine. I mean, doing the laundry. This person was in the laundromat, and she was doing her laundry, and this, I just happened to catch her at the right moment. And my neighbor who saw this picture, she goes, "Well, she's got rickets." And I didn't really know what rickets was, but apparently rickets is from a vitamin D deficiency. I can't confirm that she has rickets or not, but that was the opinion of my neighbor. So, and I just tried to capture images that represented life in mobile home parks.
And how long was the whole trip, Robert?
3.5 days. We flew down to Miami, and then we hopped in a car, the two of us, and we went from mobile home park to mobile home park, and it was up and down the East Coast over to Tampa. So it was very, very quick. We were not in the parks for a very, very long time. And yeah, go ahead.
No, so as you're taking these photographs, and you can continue as you go as we go through. Is your buddy saying, I want this, I want this. Why aren't you capturing it? Or was it not there what he was looking for?
He didn't really know what I was capturing. I was getting all excited when I'd see something. I go, Jim, I'll be right back, and I would go and I'd snap these photographs. But I kind of knew what he wanted, so I did try and capture some of the nicer things that represented things that made him feel good, because he really is a benevolent man. He set up college education programs for the people that live in these parks, and he's generous, and that's what he really wanted to see. But I mean, we saw there was when we were at one of the parks, there was two police cars rushed into the park, and they threw down tire puncture strips because there was a burglary going on. Somebody had broken into one of the homes and was stealing a flat screen TV. So you get the full gamut. Um, and it's not always very nice, but sometimes there is. And you'll see some of the photos that I have here that will show you the variety and the bandwidth. But I also found that luxury is a relative concept, and there was as much pleasure in plastic, plaster, and concrete for some as there is for gold, crystal, and champagne for others. And it really, really is relative and depends on what you have and what you're used to. This little boy, he was. I asked his parents if I could take his picture. He was standing outside with his Toys R Us plastic kitchen set, and he was so excited when I asked if I could take his photo, and you could just see how his pride and joy and in his face and his torqued little fingers, and the seizure of happiness when he was so proud to present his kitchen that was outside. And I enjoyed it because he was happy, he was excited, he was pleased. And I experienced a lot of that.
Yeah. And Robert, of all the shots that you're showing us, how many of these shots ended up on your buddy's walls?
Uh, I would say of these shots, probably 5 or 6 out of 15.
Okay.
Yeah. But there were some I mean, maybe if I can remember, I'll tell you which ones are on his wall, but they're the all feel good ones.
Right.
This here is my obligatory tricycle photo. It's homage to William Eggleston. I mean, everybody probably takes a photo of a tricycle. That was this one. And this photo, this is actually a mobile home park, and this photo, when I saw it, it actually made me very, very sad. And that's what I try and do. I try and capture photographs that elicit some kind of an emotional response and feeling from the viewer, including myself. And I look at photos that I take and what other people take, and if I have a feeling from them, it doesn't matter if I like them or hate them, as long as there's a feeling, then I can come back to that image and say, wow, that's a meaningful photograph to me. This to me was a meaningful photograph because it made me sad. Just the condition. I also said to my friend, I said, Jim, you've got to get us in some of these homes. We're running by these mobile homes, and the people are outside. And I said, Jim, you've got to get us into some of these homes. And he said he would, and he did actually. And this was one of the homes we went into, and him and his sisters were in this particular home, and they were all friendly, and they were excited to have their photos taken. It was kind of like us visiting. And I said earlier, I didn't really want to appear to be on a people safari, but boy, it turned into one pretty quickly. And I heard the comment earlier before we started the show, and yeah, it was a very interesting experience for me because I have tremendous sensitivity towards the people that I photograph and the opportunities that I have. And my wife is my conscience, and she's very, very in tune with how she feels other people feel when I'm pointing my lens at people and circumstances to take photographs. And it's like I try and go to that feeling because I want to capture those images. And sometimes it's at the expense of other people. And I don't mean to be at the expense of other people, but sometimes in order to capture a photograph, you have to go to a place of some discomfort. There were these people, these children looking out from their homes, and they moved me. The little boy with his fingers looking out of the window, and you're just looking at him, and him looking at me. It's like, what is he thinking? Can I get out of here? What are you doing out there? Why am I in here? Just lots of feelings I had. Um, and then this was another one. I think that's the same little boy, but that little girl with her eyes, they just are inviting and warm and loving, and I love this photo of her.
Framed beautifully.
Yeah. And then there's another person who opened her door and said, "Yeah, take my picture." It was fun. It was great. It was really, really wonderful to be in some of these homes. And then one night we hold on a minute, went backwards. There we go. We went into a couple's home that was decorated for the holidays, and we had a conversation. And Jim was very, very concerned about the people that live in the homes, and he would actually talk to the people and ask how he could help them and how he could make their lives better and nicer. And I really felt that he was sincere about it. Now, he makes a lot of money doing this, but he's also very, very concerned about the well-being. As a matter of fact, this trip that we went down was right after one of the big hurricanes in 2016, and he wanted to make sure that the parks were being looked after and the people were not, that they were looked after, and the remediation and the repair work was happening properly. And we wanted his people to know that he cared for them, which I thought was important.
Yeah.
And the children, they were open, they were accessible, they were kind and loving and inquisitive, they were trusting, but they were also loved. They were loved by the people in the parks. And they accepted. They were like, "Yeah, here I am. Please, who are you? Who are you with that camera? Can you take my picture?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, for sure, I'll take your picture." I loved it. And yeah, go ahead.
So is this, will you go back and do this again? Will you continue into other parks? Is this, a project shot, finished, done? I move on. Like, how is it for you?
So I'm glad you asked that question because I've been thinking about it a lot. This was in 2016, and I've done this work, and like I said, it resonated. It continues to resonate with me. One of the things that I'm a little disappointed in is the fact that we were in such a hurry to get through all of the parks that I didn't really have enough time to spend with the people to the extent that I would like to. So the answer is yes, I would love to go back, maybe pick a park or two and actually spend time in the parks, maybe even go back and visit some of the people that I photographed them and see how they are and meet with them and talk to them and develop stories about them rather than just a one-line statement about, who they are and what they're experiencing. So yeah, I would love to do that again. Um, I think it would be fascinating to go back and meet these people. And like those children that I photographed, if I could take these photos and show them, I mean, they're much older now, and like to show these pictures to them and say, "Do you remember this? This is what you look like then," and see what they're doing today. I think it would be fascinating. Yeah. So many people showed enjoyment and humor. And like I said before, a lot of them they wanted to be photographed. This guy was giving his buddy a haircut, and he saw me, and they started to play with me a little bit, which was a lot of fun.
And did you make prints for any of these folks? Did you do any of that?
No, I didn't make prints for them, and um, I didn't. And I would have liked to have thinking back, it would have been a really, really nice idea too. But I think what I need to do is get in touch with my friend and say, hey, let's revisit this. Let's go and see these people again, and maybe they would like some of these prints. Now, Jim does have a lot of these prints, and on my website, I've got hundreds of these photos. So if he wanted to take these photos and share them with his residents, he does have the choice to do that. And I don't think he did. I really don't think he did. But I could push that and see what he says. I think it would be interesting.
Yeah.
So this photo was intriguing to me because it was right after the hurricane. And if you notice, there is the Confederate flag on the left. There's a saguaro cactus that was chopped down, and you know that it's illegal to cut down their protected plants, and it is illegal to cut them down or destroy them. And then on the far right, you can see the Trump bumper sticker on that van. But this image to me is very intriguing to me. It's one of my, I'll say one of my favorites, but it's the one I think about a lot.
A lot in there.
Yeah, I think there is too. And then when you think about the size of the homes compared to nature, these trees, they dwarf these mobile home parks. And it's not only the trees, but these towers, the radio towers that each one of these homes is near. It's amazing how big they are compared to these the homes. And look at the size of the garbage cans too, compared to the homes. And then these are shipping containers that are stacked to the left of this particular home. And the containers are larger than the homes. And these are typical seagoing shipping containers. And they're stacked. They live there. These people live there. And the same with the power lines. And there was a lot of pride too. There was a full range of people who had significant pride for their environment and the way they looked after their homes. And yet the proximity and the density of these homes, you can have a really nice home. Somebody's looking after this particular home, and then right next door to it, there's one that is in terrible, terrible shape. And then there was a disparity between the values of certain things. For example, the cars. There were very expensive cars next to homes that were a fraction of the cost of the cars. And I thought that was intriguing how people decided to spend their money. And some of these, like this one here, this one is printed on metal. It's 6 feet by 9 foot and on metal in the entranceway to his office. And it's interesting to see that such a large image of that. Yeah, Mercedes, and you got jet skis, and and this fellow, he was very, very proud of his motorcycle and his shoes on top of the awning there. I thought that was intriguing too. And then there were a lot of pets. They had dogs. I didn't see many cats, but there were a lot of dogs, and a lot of dogs were outside, and then there were dogs on the inside, and you could tell. I mean, we're dog people, and we care greatly for our animals, and our dogs are never in distress. But when you look at these dogs in these small confined spaces, when people are at work and they come home, you can see that. I mean, they go crazy in these small homes. You can see the pair of dogs in here that are just looking out the window, kind of like the children were. You know, they're looking out the window, wondering what's on the outside. There's another little dog looking out at me through not sure what that was. It was like a little shelter.
Yeah.
And this is Michelle. She was a community spokesperson and park ambassador, and she tooled around the park on her motorized wheelchair, making sure everybody was in line and happy and taking care of everybody and listening. And she really was the spokesperson, one of the spokespeople, and she really enjoyed her her existence in this park. I don't know why she was in a wheelchair, but she was a unique individual, and she spoke with us, and she talked to us, and she was very open and vocal.
Mm.
And then there was a couple, Peter and Madge. He was a retired machine tool rebuilder. He rebuilt Acme Gridley automatic screw machines in Ohio. And he retired and he sold all of their possessions. And he bought a 1972 GM Buffalo bus. And now they live on the road and they go from mobile home park to mobile home park. And he spends his time um, repacking hunting bullets. And that's his little uh, bullet repacking machines, his shell packer. And they were interesting too. And they just travel all over from park to park.
The
And
stories
and
behind each of these folks is what's really intriguing, right?
yeah, and that's back to your question earlier, was would I go back? And the answer is yes, because I'd like to go spend time with these people and learn a little bit more about their journey and how they got there and how long they were there and what they do. And like the families go out, the parents go to work, and then there are certain people that stay in the park kind of like a nanny, and they look after the children, and the kids play in these small confined spaces, and they look after each other. I mean, these three little boys, you can see the one tying the shoes of the other one. I mean, they're kind, and they want to play, and they were playing soccer together, and you can see this is a nanny. I mean, I assume she's a nanny, or she's probably not a nanny. She's probably one of the people who stay behind, one of the parents that stay behind and look after the kids when the other parents are at work. And they play sports, and the roads are narrow and they don't have big sporting areas, so they have to make do where they are. And again, these homes, they're packed. They're high density. There's really no privacy, very, very little privacy. But they do have community spaces, which is, kind of nice, like the pool area.
Very nice. So,
And
Robbie,
they have, yeah, go ahead.
so and you can continue going through, but you said it a couple times. I'd like to go back. I want to go back. I should go back. What's the tripping point to going back? Because you could do it. What is it, a time thing? Like, what holds you back from actually going?
So I believe that the reason that this venture was successful was because I had somebody there that was, well, he was the owner of the parks, so he could actually provide me with access
Mm.
to the inside, and he could introduce me to the park managers, and the park managers then could introduce me to the people that lived in the parks. I had an advocate, and without an advocate, I think it becomes much more difficult, and it becomes more of the people safari environment. So I think in order to do this, I think that I have talked to him about it, and he is interested. I just have to say to him, "Hey, let's go, Jim. Let's make
Right.
another trip and let's go." And just getting that on the schedule at the right time, I think, is what's critical to do this. And I'm busy. I've got a lot of things going on. I'm also in business. Photography is my passion. It's a hobby. I've never made any money doing it. I do it because I love doing it. So I have to kind of fit it in with my
Life.
life, my family life, my business life. So, and I do spend a lot of time on it, but fitting it in would be I think that's the biggest challenge. But it can be done, and I will do it. And listening to this conversation, listening to your questions and my self talk, it kind of gives me the incentive to really reinvigorate the conversation. So I probably will do that when I get back. We're in Mexico now for a week, but we'll be back in March, and I'll probably
Reach out.
restart the conversation.
Great.
And I think Oh yeah, they love technology. They have everything they need. They have the satellite dishes, and they have uh, they have everything they need from the technological standpoint. And that's
Uh,
my spiel.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Oh yeah, that's my dog.
Everyone needs their 5 minutes of fame.
Yep, yep. He
No,
goes with us
that's great.
everywhere. Yeah, yeah.
And Robert, I hope you can stick around. People have questions. But that's terrific presentation.
Well,
Terrific.
thank you. Yeah, I'm happy. I
Really
want to
good
stick
job.
around. I want to see the other. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right, so you stop sharing,
Okay.
and we'll get Margo right up.
Hold on a minute. I gotta.
Thank you, Robert, for doing that.
Oh, hey, it was a pleasure. It was an honor. Absolute honor. Hold on. I gotta stop sharing. Uh,
It's okay, Robert. I stopped it for you.
thank you. Great, great.
Yeah, Robert, just one thing you should read in the chat room. Intriguing work indeed, Robert. Thank you so much for sharing. It's a privilege to see more of this series. I love the intimacy of the images. And somebody says it has the makings of a great book.
Well, thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
Margo, you're on.
Okay. Do you want me to go to share to start?
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Okay, great.
All right. So, when I was in high school, a friend of mine played a Buddy Guy and Junior Wells song, Messing with the Kid. And that just did something, that planted the seed. As I say in the book, I mean, Junior's vocals, the way he played the harp, the way Buddy played the guitar, man, I had never been exposed to the blues, and it just was exciting and it was moving to hear them. And I knew that one day I wanted to learn more about the blues. And it took a couple of decades to get to a place. I worked after college and then I went to law school. I became a public defender. And then it was time I'm still a lawyer today, but to fit other things into my life, I took a year off from the practice and you started going to photography classes. And in 1993, I started going into the blues clubs around the Boston area. And in 1997, after meeting the musicians, getting to know some of them, and I realized, well, for me, I wanted to learn what are the stories behind the music. The people that I was meeting, and this was, the early 1990s, many of the blues musicians who grew up in Mississippi or the South had moved to Chicago, and they were still coming east as they had been to play in the clubs around Boston and the New England area.
So they would come up there because that's where the money was?
Yeah, well, they'd also, like you'll see, some of the guys played with Muddy Waters, for example. They'd been coming east, as they played around the world,
Right.
England, Europe, but, they would play from coast to coast, Canada. So when, in the 90s, as the musicians, some of these musicians were obviously older, but were familiar with the clubs in Boston, were still gigging and playing, with their own bands. So that would bring them east. The first House of Blues was actually in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Wow.
And the guy at the time who was managing it was a musician himself. So he was bringing a lot of the Muddy Waters tribute band, Howlin' Wolf's musician, Hubert Sumlin, all kinds of the heart of the blues musicians who were still alive were still coming east as they had been. And meeting the musicians, as I started talking to them over the years, in addition to photographing and listening to the music, it struck me that, oh my God, these guys grew up when there was sharecropping, when there was segregation. What was that like? I need to go to Mississippi. And that was, and in 1997, I just went to Mississippi. I knew one person, Calvin Fuzz Jones, who was Muddy's bass player and had played with Howlin' Wolf. But I just went, and I have been going ever since. So this project, the book, is the culmination of about 30 years of photographing, and I had also started doing oral histories of the blues musicians. So
Well,
some of the musicians, you I knew for decades. Writing somebody's oral history in their words requires a lot of time and patience to write the stories in their words. I became a contributor for Living Blues, a contributing writer and photographer. Living Blues is based in Mississippi, and every I would come back, and every trip was great. I love meeting the people. I love seeing them again. I love seeing the children and grandchildren grow up, and uh, still makes
so
me, still excited to go every year.
So the first year that you went, give us a little context of how that was with your family. You're going down to Mississippi. Was everyone behind you and, like thrilled for you? Were they worried? Like, can you shine some light on that?
My mother was probably a little bit, but I'd always been sort of a wild child, and I had a very independent streak, and I liked meeting people. I liked talking to people. I mean, you you're a public defender, which I was for 6 years, and I've done all court appointed work ever since. I like being a voice for people. I like meeting different people and sharing my strength with them, listening to their stories. So,
It was a
uh,
natural step.
so it was, and uh, so they got to see some of, I would come home and work on my images, and that, I would share them. They saw a few shows early on. And I would always tell my mother where I was, so she, you know, but I'm sure it was a little worrisome, but every trip has been great.
Yeah.
So this last year, University Press of Mississippi published this book, Deep Inside the Blues. That's Other Turner. Other lived to be over 90 years old, and I met Other Turner my first trip in 1997. Uh, I had gone to a little festival, and the editor of Living Blues at the time, I said, "What should I do tomorrow?" And he drew me a map. And I was, again, lucky. It was Other Turner's annual fife and drum picnic, goat picnic. And he and his neighbors, and this is part of a tradition, particularly in the hill country of Mississippi. And Other's one of really the family to carry on the fife and drum tradition. And I went every year he was alive. I went to his funeral, and I just this year, in the last edition of Living Blues in November, the cover story was Sade, his granddaughter Sade Thomas. I took the cover photograph and wrote her story for Living Blues. So, and I met her in 1997 when she was a little girl playing the fife.
Margo, is this all shot on film?
I started shooting with yes, with Triax film, and continued, I think, to about 2014, 15,
Okay.
and then switched to digital. But my true love and passion is I love film, and I love going into the dark room.
Okay. Two things. We never use the term "I got lucky."
Okay.
That's perseverance. That's passion. That's what gets you the shots, the map, everything. Show us film. Show us images.
Yep. All right, so this is my friend Luther Guitar Jr. Johnson. He was one of the first musicians I met. Luther was part of Muddy Waters band in the 70s. Luther grew up in the Delta of Mississippi, came north to Chicago in his late teens, and so just to get in some of these, I'll just give you a taste of the story so
Yep.
people can feel it. Muddy was my idol. I told my mom, someday I'm going to play with Muddy Waters. You're going to pay to see me. I'm going to make it big. During my years with Muddy, we traveled the world. From the time I was a kid, I've wanted to reach other people through my music. Music is powerful. It can heal you and it can kill you. It's got to be played with a feeling. I feel every damn thing I'm playing. My music is a gift from above, and I want to use it as a gift, share it with my fans. If I couldn't play and sing, I could be back in Mississippi. I could be locked up in jail. You never know. I feel lucky. For all the years I dreamed about playing the blues, my dreams came true. And it was Luther's story I first wrote for Living Blues. He was living in New Hampshire. He had come east and established his own band and remained in the East Coast. And I did his medical care for his life, so we became very good friends, and he meant a lot to me. We're still in the East Coast, Pine Top Perkins on the left, and his buddy David. Just give me a moment to find the quote if I can.
You did say Pine Tar Perkins, right?
Pine Top Perkins.
Okay, great.
Pine Top lived to be and played into his 90s. I saw him play King Biscuit in his 90s, and he would always dress dapper. Um, he played with Muddy Waters for a long time. David Maxwell, as I discovered, many of the Boston musicians learned from people like Pine Top and hung out with them and really appreciated what they learned from them. And when Pine Top died, David had written, the great blues pianist Pine Top Perkins brought so much joy to so many people through his playing and singing. To me, he was a lifelong blues father, mentor, and dear friend. It was Pine Top who really showed me what it was all about. The turn of a melodic phrase, the gift of simplicity, the way to express with space and breath, the sweetness and overall mellow quality of a slow blues, the way to vary one's touch to get that special lilt or emphasis, and most of all, how to dig in with grease and reach the core of what we call deep blues. Thank you, Mr. Perkins, for opening up so many hearts, mine included.
Wow.
And that was the Muddy Waters tribute band was playing in Portland, Maine, and he had brought David had brought some Hennessy to share with Pine Top. This is T Model Ford. He was living in Greenville, Mississippi, but I first met T Model at the Middle East in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and just loved the moment with the background and his hand and the sign T Model. T Model was a true character, and so many of the musicians that I met were all their own, had their own personality. T Model loved to play and didn't, would just keep playing for hours if you let him.
So over the years, you became part of their family.
Right. I mean, I would, for many of the musicians, I would continue to visit and see them and go to their shows until they died. Yep. This is Elsie Ulmer. So I wrote T Model's story for Living Blues. I wrote Elsie Ulmer's story for Living Blues. And Elsie said, singing in the fields was where everything come from. All the blues come out of the field, and I'd be just picking cotton, humming, listening. I hear somebody way over yonder sing. I woke up this morning, my head was bad. My baby done left me, and I was all so sad. And Elsie's story was unusual. He grew up outside the Delta in a small community where white and black musicians played together, fathers and grandfathers, their grandfathers played together. And I met, some of his white friends, and they would go to one another's homes and play together. But Elsie, I thought this was beautiful the way he said this. There was no mixing in them days, but I can tell you this, the white boys and girls that I knew and was raised up around, we got along like brothers and sisters. Lord have mercy, we did. Them daddies would kill 'em if they didn't. We couldn't meddle, call each other names. I can prove that today because a lot of folks are still living. It just makes you cry to see how we got along and to see how much prejudice there was everywhere else. When God made everybody, nobody can help how they're made. God made a bouquet, like you got a bouquet of flowers, different colors. You ever see them flowers growling at one another? No, you don't.
Mm. Wow.
This was at Elsie's home, and while I would work on his story, I would stay overnight and in his guest bedroom, and he could play any instrument, and he would, but this was a picture with the mandolin. This is Sam
And
Carr.
Margo,
Yes.
like when did it hit you that this is my life's passion? That I'm going to document this and I'm going to take get all this information and make it my life's work. How did that happen for you?
So when I started going again, there was no concept of a book. It was just I was moved to go, and every trip, as I said, and I'm meeting people. And it was actually, this is a picture of Sam Carr. In 1998, I think it's on this. I took a picture of Frank Frost. Frank Frost and Sam Carr were sort of anchors of the Delta, the Jelly Roll Kings. And I wanted to take the picture to Frank. And I saw him in 1999. He was in a wheelchair on the stage. And I said to Sam, I asked if we could bring the picture, but Frank was too frail. He died. And I said to myself, my God, has anybody written, do we know Frank's story in his own words about his life? And I just said, I need to write as many stories of the older musicians as I can. As I said, I felt I needed to go to, these guys could give firsthand accounts. What was it like to grow up in Mississippi? Where did the music come from? And of course, it came out of their life stories.
Mm.
And I became very friendly with Sam. And one day, I called the house, and I was very friendly with his wife. And Doris said, Sam's going net fishing. And I just said, can I go? And then I ended up photographing Sam and his neighbor catching the fish. And here's just a moment. Sam was probably 70 or so and it was a hard job.
And all these guys are, of course, self-taught, right? I mean, they just figured it out themselves.
Yeah. Or watching other people. His father was a famous blues musician, Robert Nighthawk. But learning from others. Here I was coming to visit Sam and Doris, and I parked my car. I'm walking up in the driveway. The scene is not staged. This was just, and Sam played the drums. Sam was known for his drum playing, but it was just a quiet moment. Sam playing with Andrew Shine Turner. Shine is still alive today. But this is just the scene as it unfolded, and the tip bucket was there. I didn't plan it there. Just a beautiful, quiet moment, and I wrote Sam's story for Living Blues.
The greatest of nicknames, my God.
Yeah, they all have nicknames.
It's beautiful.
I went to a club that no longer exists, although it has a Blues Trails marker. It's called Poor Monkeys. It's been photographed by New York Times and other photographers. But this was in the early, days. There was that one other white person there who was dancing.
What year are we, Margo?
I'm sorry, 2000.
2000, okay.
And I just sat across. I was at the table with those two women sitting across from them, and we were talking, and the scene just happened in front of me. So just the moment happened, just like that. I had my camera and got a very memorable moment.
Yeah.
Uh, this was Arthur Williams. He played with Sam Carr and Frank Frost. This is around 1999, I think. Um, and the club, the legend is spelled how it's spelled. And I love, here he is having a wonderful moment. And he had recordings, he performed at King Biscuit, other places, and here's somebody not paying any attention, jostling him as as Arthur's having his moment. This, so you saw a T model earlier. This was his wife Stella and Stella's granddaughter Stella. And again, this was just the scene in the house where they were living at the time. This is Joe Cole. I met him. This is a little place outside of Clarksdale. He was the last of the sharecroppers who was still living on this piece of land, and he told me that the owner of the land said that he could stay there. And in the old days, he would play at the jukes, but there weren't any more of them. He had served in the army, and I asked if I could take his photograph and with the cotton in the fields, and this was the pose, just like he was still, standing erect as a soldier, proud.
Yeah. And Margo, can you give us any sense of why these little clubs and bars have gone away? Is it just people aren't playing, people aren't interested? What's going on down there?
Well, when the sharecropping ended, as would go travel back to where with many of the musicians where they grew up. I mean, nobody was, there was nobody, the work had become mechanized. People weren't, and they moved off the plantations, and they most of the old buildings are totally gone. None of very little of the history in that sense has been preserved. So Joe Cole at that time was the last person living on that in the particular piece of land. But he told me how he used to play and how there used to be a lot of people there.
So does the music go away or does the music go somewhere else?
There's still I mean there's still lots of great music in Mississippi. And I'm giving you, I was told you the example of Sade was like 7 years old when I met her. She's now in her 30s, and she's keeping the fife and drum tradition alive. Um, she's toured in Europe. She's got several CDs out. Uh, in this particular slideshow, because there were a limited number of pictures that I could put in. I mean, I met R.L. Burnside, who's, one of the beloved musicians of the Hill Country. He has a number of children, and they're still playing. You can find them in Mississippi. His grandson, who started drumming behind him when he was in his teens, Cedric, is now 45 and is a huge name. Cedric Burnside has gotten a Grammy, and received all kinds of honors. So there are people carrying on the music, young people in Clarksdale. There's, the next generation who knew Big Jack or Sam Carr, taught, grew up in the Delta Blues School, taking, learning how to play the music. And they're now in their 40s playing, in the clubs in Clarksdale. There's young people who I've been seeing lately, coming up playing the blues. So it's different in some ways, but in Mississippi, you can still find the roots of the blues, people
Right.
who care about the roots of the blues, and some who grew up. This was Betty Vaughn. I was
Eddie Vaughn.
I was across the road. I was working on Razorblade's story, and we went back to where he grew up, and she's probably about 90, and she walked across the way to see what was going on. Who were, she obviously knew Josh. His name is Josh Stewart, and I wrote his story for Living Blues, but and I really liked Betty, and I went to visit her, and a neighbor was doing her hair, and the light was beautiful outside, and I just said, I asked if I could take her picture, and and yep,
And Betty Vaughn is her last name?
yeah, yes.
Beautiful.
And I have I interviewed her, it's not a Living Blues story, but I have her words. This is Mickey Rogers, who had just turned 80 and lives in Greenville. And I wrote his story for Living Blues, and this was an example of a cotton house. And, we were just traveling around, and he was, talking about where he grew up. So he knew Emmett Till, and I'll share a few of his words. My grandmother, mother, aunties, and uncles, and a whole bunch of cousins moved to the bourbon plantation out from Leland, Mississippi. My mother went to work picking and chopping cotton with my younger brothers and sisters. I used to come down to Mississippi every year after school got out. They put me on the train by myself. Emmett Till was in class with my older cousin in Chicago. Emmett was 3 years older than me, and he had gone to Mississippi to visit his family in the summer of 1955. I was there that same summer visiting my mother and grandmother when Emmett got killed. My mother and grandmother said Emmett whistled at a white lady. I asked, why did they kill him? They said that's what they killed him for. Just for whistling? You can kill somebody for that?
Mm. Wow.
So he didn't want to come back to Mississippi. It took a number of years, but then he missed his mom, and he loved the music, and he was learning to play in Chicago and learned from Hubert Sumlin and Howlin' Wolf. And as I said, he's living in Mississippi today. This is Willie Big Eye Smith. He was Muddy's drummer for 20 years. Lived in Chicago when I interviewed him, but he would go back to Mississippi and Helena, Arkansas to perform. And he told me how he said to me, Emmett Till was killed in 1955. I went to the funeral home in Chicago and seen him in the open coffin. It was only about 3 blocks from my mother's. I went there and seen him. You've seen the pictures with his face, right? But I'm looking at it with my natural eyes. I was only 19 years old. I was mad as hell.
Wow.
And, Willie was great. I wrote his story for Living Blues. He grew up in Helena, Arkansas.
And really dumb question. Is Living Blues still a running publication or online publication?
No, it's still, you can still get the magazine. My story on Sade Thomas was just published in November, the last edition, November, December edition.
Okay. I apologize for the dumb question.
This was my first trip to Mississippi, 1997. I had gone to West Point, Mississippi. There was the Howlin' Wolf Museum, the Howlin' Wolf Festival. And the next day, one of the founders of the museum took me to meet Annie Eggerson. Her husband was related to Howlin' Wolf, and they had a bedroom in their house where Howlin' Wolf stayed. And, obviously, Annie standing in front of these pictures, and of the Kennedys and Martin Luther King, and it was just a beautiful moment. I asked if I could take her picture. So this was I was lucky enough to witness I was a witness several baptisms in Moon Lake.
Margo, you use that word again.
I know. Well, um,
It's funny.
but this was another, a wonderful moment. The ministers had each perform baptisms of members of their congregation, and then they just all walked out of the water holding hands.
Beautiful.
This is Other Turner, the cover of the book. Other, when I started going, was still, they would slaughter, he would kill the goat. Men from the community would help slaughter the goat, and they were cooking them in these big, big pots. And, and so Other was working in the day, and then at night, at the time I went, it was 2 nights of music, and then he played fife. I have photographed him playing the drums. When he died in 2003, and I came home and was watching Martin Scorsese's oh God, what was the movie in New York? The Gangs of New York.
Okay.
Anyway, all of a sudden the soundtrack comes on, and it's like, oh my God, Other's calling. Other was on the soundtrack.
There you go.
He was just marvelous. I mean, he was playing, drinking, smoking cigarettes in his 90s, and nobody messed with Other. You did not cross Other. He was a lot of fun, but you did not, he was beloved. This is a scene from the picnic, a different year. This was Calvin Jackson, who was R.L. Burnside's son-in-law, the father of Cedric. And, Calvin's playing, and this woman just, gets behind him and has her 15 seconds of fame or whatever. But this is just what happened. And Calvin told me about the early days. My parents would take us to fife and drum picnics when we were real young. We could sit on the porch and hear the drums all the way from down there at Other's on a good clear night. The drums did something to me. I just loved the sound. Back then, drums had real hides, and they made the sticks out of different stuff, unlike the sticks you buy in the store these days. When I first heard the drums, it sounded like the sound was so much more clear, so deep and real. The picnic drums is the ones that really caught me. I used to get behind Abe Young and pull down on his shirt and beg him if I could play. I'd watch and watch. I'd try and beat any drum I got to. I would hit anything Mama had around, buckets or whatever, till she run me off. And I have, there's a picture in the book of him playing with one of his grandsons and another relative when they were kids, and they're beating on buckets. This is Bobby Rush on my first trip to Mississippi, 1997. Bobby's playing in Bryant's Farm, just a little place, and he often performed with dancers. And God love him, Bobby is still alive today, performing, 90 years old, and I've seen him in New England. I saw him at King Biscuit. He still commands the stage, does not sit down, sings, plays the harmonica, talks to the audience. Everybody knows and loves Bobby Rush. When I first started going down, you'd see grandmothers taking their grandkids to see Bobby Rush singing along. And that's Oops, that's my show.
Wow. Wow, that is really great. So, I mean, at some point you go from photographer to historian and then back.
Yeah, I mean, it's
It's
just
a beautiful thing.
well, one, it's a great, it's a, I wanted to preserve the stories. What was it like if I didn't do this, the stories would be lost.
Yeah.
And when I wrote these stories for Living Blues, we start with who were your parents? Who were your grandparents? Was your childhood like? Um, you know, they were only able to go to school a few months of the year. These musicians were working out in the fields in the hot, hot sun when they were children.
Yeah.
Um, and music, I read the quote from Elsie Ulmer, but many of them would talk about singing in the fields, singing, plowing, how do you make the time go by? Music was like salvation, whether it was the blues, gospel, going to many of them went to church on Sunday, some of them sang in the gospel. Um, but there was joy in some of them, like, that we saw Luther and Willie made it out of the fields to have careers and travel the world and have records and their own bands.
Great. Well,
I'm still
I,
going. I love it.
great, 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 great. Well, I hope you could stick around.
I will. Thank
Um,
you.
that's just great. And you should check out the chat room and everyone, you can go to Margot's website and you can buy the book and you should buy the book. And up next is Liam Sharp. Liam, we're gonna let you share your screen and off we go.
Great. So I just need to play slideshow. So first of all, Frank, thanks for giving me the opportunity to do this, and thank you very much for the presentations tonight. They're really good. I think my work is really kind of different in the sense of, first of all, first of all, I'm a portrait photographer, so all the work you're going to see tonight is portraits. And I guess I'm really interested. I noticed in the comments there were a lot of things sort of beauty. I never get beautiful work because I guess what I'm interested in is humanity. And I'm interested in sort of storytelling through capturing humanity of people. So the body of work that I'm going to show you, I guess, really started, let's just sort of start, because there's about 80 images here. So there's a lot of pictures here. So the body of work started essentially in Coney Island. I didn't show any of this, but they started further back. And really it was kind of taking pictures of the community or a place that I went to Coney Island pretty.
Liam, you're echoing
Go
a
ahead.
little bit.
Oh, that's strange. Why is that?
Frankie sounds fine to me.
Yeah, okay, then it was just me then. Let it go.
So I started shooting. First of all, these pictures I started shooting in Coney Island, and so we have an apartment in London, and so what struck me about Coney Island, essentially, the people that were photographing were the people that were sort of from the four boroughs that sort of connect and feed into Coney Island, the Bronx, Queens, Brooklyn, obviously Manhattan, but they were essentially the people that couldn't necessarily afford the sort of holidays away, and so this was really their place to come and go to the beach. And so it kind of really was a slice of life of New York. And so when I went to England, we have a flat there, and I would go every summer. I felt like I really needed to kind of continue that work, and I wasn't in New York where I normally shoot in the summer, and so I wanted to find a place that kind of represented a certain community. And so what I did is I started to I figured that I started to do some research in Northern England. So I was really interested in sort of the working class of England, similar to the working class of New York, which kind of I found Coney Island kind of represented. So I found this place called Skegness in the East Midlands, and I've been going back there now for 3 years. And so I started to shoot. So these are images that I shot this summer. So this is very recent work. And what I was trying to do, I guess, is I started further back, and as you see some of the other work as we go further into the presentation, they are further back. But what I found is getting closer. I was able to really kind of get closer to their humanity and tell more of the story about who they are and kind of what I was feeling and what I was interested in. So unlike Margot's presentation, where she, got to know these people, have been going back for 30 years. I've been going back for 3 years. But the process that I would go in to shoot these pictures is I really wanted to sort of capture effectively how I saw them or how I met them. So this is 3 hours from London. I would have 4 hours to shoot and 3 hours to get back to London. And so within that 4 hour period, I would do on average 40 different portraits. So I would approach people. I was predominantly shooting, in my mind, for the Portrait of Britain. So this was Portrait of Britain is part of British Journal of Photography, and every year they pick 200 shortlist, 100 selected images to represent British society, a cross section of British society that year. And I had been shooting for Portrait of Humanity, which is the international, and that's what the Brooklyn work had won and got into that publication. And because I guess I trained in Britain, I've always sort of appreciated the style and the kind of craft of British photography. And so I really kind of looked up to this publication and this particular contest, really, or every year doing this. So what I would do is bring this book and talk to these individuals and present them to them, basically explain to them this is what I was doing, and if their picture was selected, it would be in the book. And this person here that we're looking at, her son was selected for the Portrait of Britain this year, and I'll get to that image. The problem is I'm meeting these people, and I'm getting their trust, and the mistake that I've made, thinking it's too much to ask to actually get them to sign a model release form, and I didn't get a model release form, and so they weren't able to actually exhibit my picture that won the Portrait of Britain this year. And so that, I guess I have to change what I do and how I do it. Maybe I won't.
You couldn't go back, Liam? And you couldn't go back to have them sign?
Well, the problem is, as with Coney Island, and the thing is that I always send pictures, and she wrote back saying, I absolutely love the picture of my son. It was very clear about what it was for. She wished me all the best. And so when it won, I sent her an email saying, it won and, selected, and she never responded to me. So I don't know I don't know what happened. Maybe she's not well. Yeah. Maybe her partner didn't agree with it. But she was extremely positive, and I'll show you the picture later on in the presentation. So the struggles that I have as a photographer is because I'm connected. I'm what their agenda usually is essentially they think I'm taking a beautiful picture of them or a pleasant picture of them. And essentially I'm looking to take a strong picture of them or what I consider to be what I'm interested in. And so that's always a sort of a conflict that I have as a photographer, in the sense of, as photographers, I think we should be taking strong images, and we shouldn't be afraid to take the kind of pictures that we want to take. And that's what I do. So recently I went to present my work at this publisher's workshop, and I got a lot of pushback because I don't usually show my work. And part of the reason is I want the freedom just to do the work that I want to do and not necessarily get the kind of pushback that I potentially will get. So I went and I actually showed the work, and the pushback that I got was, you need to be from those areas. You need to be from Skegness. You need to be part of the community. You need to be an advocate. You need to give voice to the community. And my feeling is that as photographers and artists, we need to be able to photograph what we want to photograph. We need to be able to, we're artists here, and if we are, I've spent my whole life working for clients. If I now have to kind of think about these rules and think about, and I've done that though. I've photographed for the First Nations. I photographed for African tribes. I photographed with trying to give them voice. But at some point, I think, we should be able to, we should photograph the way we want to photograph. whether or not it's comfortable, whether or not it's what people are comfortable with, whether or not it's different. Um, so, so
Yeah,
there.
I guess the discussion becomes, are you, if, and I'm sure you're not, deceiving these people into, for something other, another reason, that's something else. But if you're being honest, I'm looking for a strong portrait of your character, you know, that,
Well,
you know,
I'm just asking to photograph them, and I'm showing them where the pictures are going to be used, why I'm doing it.
yeah,
But my intent is to photograph what I see, and recently I won the photo slam at ICP, and photo slam is basically where you talk about your work and you show your work, and the audience votes. And there was somebody in the audience behind me who was from this area, and he said, these are truly representative of the people of that area. And literally, when you go there to these areas, I mean, this is a working class area. These are the people that you see there, right? And I am just photographing these people as I see them. And it's just that I'm doing it in a way, I'm just a photographer. I'm going to do it my way, you know. So these are, as we move further back. I'd be interested to hear what people have to say about that, you know, in the
yeah. I
sense of,
mean, Robert writes, I think being part of the community is important when you're trying to gain trust or access, but you seem to have both.
yeah,
And
I mean,
the other Robert wrote, Liam, I love your work. You have verbalized my thoughts and feelings about what I like to photograph, and it echoes my motivators in my trailer park series. Thank you. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, essentially, this is kind of what I see and and I, you know, they have been successful. I've every year since I've been doing this have, you know, been part of the British Journal of Photography Portrait of Britain, which is and Portrait of Humanity too. So, which when you think about it, you know, I'm one of the 200 or 100 photographers or images selected that year to represent Britain, or in the case of Portrait of Humanity, the world, right? So. Um, these are very much the people. So part of what I wanted to do here is kind of put in images that I felt were necessarily strong images, but kind of to represent, give you more of a sense, I guess, of the people that
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
making.
anyone looking at these now gets a sense of this beach town and who's at that beach town. And if that was your purpose, you've got it. You know, these are the folks who are on the beach.
Yeah, I
These,
mean, I'm going to go back, but I'm not going to go back here. I think I'm going to go back to Blackpool. Initially, I went to Blackpool, and what was Blackpool has a very, you couldn't really get to the beach, and so that was discouraging for me. But I think it's really the culture. It's really the kind of working class culture that I want to photograph now that I've started to photograph this, at least at this one place. So that's probably going to be my next project next year when I go back.
yeah, here's another statement. This is also something very powerful. There is also something very powerful and important about being the outsider, being open to honestly reflect what you see. I mean, and that's you're just you're
Well,
documenting what's there.
isn't that the job of a photographer? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. So
Isn't that the job of an artist? I mean, you know, I mean, you know,
Liam,
if I'm
I
just
think Liam,
photographing what they want me to photograph, that's the point. I don't get it. Like
yeah. Well, Liam,
you know, and the other thing is that at the end of the day, yeah,
no,
go ahead.
you've opened up the can. What you must do now is tell people why you're feeling that way because someone gave you pushback. So now you have to explain yourself.
Explain why I feel this way in the
Yeah,
sense.
that somebody was giving you pushback on, you shouldn't be taking these photographs?
Well, I just think as artists going forward, our role as artists is to document, and to document, we have to do it from our artist perspective. And I think in the end, it's more important to have images, in the future than not to have images. And if we are discouraged in taking the pictures we want to take because we're considered not from there, or we're not, then we're not going to get pictures, And I just think in the long term, it's better to have the work than not, as far as humanity, if you know what I'm saying. So
yeah, you're 100% right.
That's the way I see it. So
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and I always sense that the kind of work that I do would get that kind of pushback. And that's partly why I don't show it, to be honest with you, because I think it gives me freedom just to do whatever I want.
Yeah, let me read this. I had a similar response from some. As a white New Yorker photographing small-town black rodeo cowboys, the question was, am I exploiting these people? But it comes down to intent. Why are you there? Another one. Yes, very strong, but maybe not always complimentary. What kind of feedback are there those who feel betrayed? Right? So, there's a lot of different ways. I mean, everyone, you'll go through this chat room. Everyone loves this work. So it's important. Here's from James. It's important to be honest with the folks you're photographing. You, of course, were, and that's, the rest is sort of noise.
Yeah, but there's honesty in what the intent is, meaning it's for this purpose. But the question is it honest in the intent of what the subject perceives why you're taking a picture? I mean, from their perspective, they're looking at selfies and they smile and so on. I'm not doing that. What I'm doing is actually, my style is that I photograph very quickly. I only shoot a few frames. I light, but I shoot only a few frames. So I'm shooting before they even get to respond, or I'm shooting exactly how they are. And this is how he looked at me before he was aware that I'm even taking. So this was the portrait that won the Portrait of Britain.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Jamie has it perfectly. The question is, if the dignity of the subject is taken into account, is it? Right? Bruce Guyton had been doing this for quite some time, but he's openly looking for a confrontation, right? And do you any post-processing on these?
A little bit, not much.
Okay.
Not much. Not much. I'm not really looking for confrontation. What I'm looking for is kind of an honest,
authentic,
my interaction with them as I see it. Yeah, what's that?
No, you're looking
authentic,
right?
As I see them, without allowing them to sort of go into their smile or whatever they want to do. Right? I'm capturing them before they get to that point. I want to photograph them as I see them.
Yeah,
basically.
And you have an off-camera flash. What's your setup?
Yeah, I got one little light source, and I'm really good at balancing out my light pretty quick. So I have a little stand and one light source, or I hand hold it, depending on how close I'm getting. But so this also won Portrait of Britain. So that's it. Lots of images.
Yeah, no, that's yeah, that great work. I mean, you really, I guess for the viewer, it's, do I know what he was trying to achieve? And certainly from your work, you get it. And that's something that runs through the 3 presentations tonight. You guys went for a project and you come back and, I feel like I have blues in my soul. I want a nickname. That's when this is, I grew up in Brooklyn, and I mean, I don't know if I should share this, but my nickname was Bubs, Bubs, right? For a variety of reasons, but like nothing like the names that Margo had. That's some sweet stuff. You could feel the music just in those folks' names.
Blues musicians always had the best nicknames.
Yeah, for sure. So, Margo, what's next for you in your project?
I'm continuing to go to Mississippi, whether whether there will be time to do a second book. But as I've just finished Shardae's oral history, working with her. I'm working on two other stories. So I will just continue because I think it's important to write these stories in their words. And my project for critical mass that won the award is
Right.
another 30-year project that I've been doing at the same time. I started in 1993 photographing a family in Maine, rural Maine, and I'm working on getting the images scanned. That was also started in with black and white film. So I've been a busy kid, and I'm working on my family stories that combines old photographs and interviews and documents. So
Right. All right. So a lot of stuff. Robert, what's up for you next? Turn the sound
There.
off.
Yeah, I got you. So I'm working on I have two series that I've done. One is industrialism, which is 45 years of photographing industrial landscapes and facilities. And then there's this one. And I still have hundreds of photos that I didn't share with you that I still like. So I would actually, and based upon this conversation tonight, revisit the parks that I went to and see if I can dive a little bit deeper into the in-depth personalities of the people that I saw. And Liam, your work is amazing. And
Thank you.
Margo, yours is as well.
it's been a pleasure. Pleasure to
Yeah.
And Liam, what are you going to do next?
Ah, God, I don't know. I mean, I'm gonna carry on with, that project. Who cares? I'm gonna do it, but I'm gonna do it my way, and I'm gonna continue using my instincts. And I have some clear idea about, and it won't be pretty. It's not going to be beautiful. I'm
Yeah, you
sorry.
don't do
I don't
pretty.
do beautiful work.
Liam, come with me. Come with me to the mobile home parks.
Yeah,
There you go.
you
Not
know,
doing Fashion Week?
not doing
Yeah,
Fashion
there
Week.
you go.
It won't be beautiful. And I did put together a book of this work, and I'm now pulling together because I've done many different bodies of work that I've never really done much with, which I think are pretty strong bodies of work. So I am putting together a number of books as well. I'm kind of putting together kind of looking back as well. But generally speaking, I think it's only important to show what you're doing now. That's what I think is what's current is what's important.
Right.
But
Yeah, and everybody, you can go to these folks' websites to see their work, see their books, everything that they've published, and to purchase or reach out for prints, anything, that's all available from these folks. But that I mean that's a really, enriching evening of work, from all of you. It's really it really, is very, very inspiring. And I can tell from, all the content in the chat room that people are really, really engaged in each of these, varied works. And the commentary, you find that the commentary is really beautiful. The way you guys are speaking about your work and, getting us to feel what you feel. And that, that isn't always conveyed. But you guys, really did a terrific job doing that, and it makes for really intriguing presentations. And so Margo, you're really of the three of them, of the three presentations tonight, you have most of the ongoing contact with these folks, right? I mean, over all these years. And what is your uh, trick is the wrong word. What motivates you to keep on going back?
Well, as I said, recording the stories has been in the musician's words. I can't do as many as I did because of the other projects, but that's important. And in doing the book and keeping the stories alive, I say in my book, people were my teachers, and I want to, and that remembering is sacred. It's a duty, and to share the stories and the photographs. These are important stories, and the music is important. That's what drives me to do as much as I can.
Right.
And
And,
it's been rewarding in spades, and people that I've met. Yeah.
yeah,
I-
I guess, to Robert, to Liam, when you hear that, is that motivational to, to go back and, or not, to go back and understand more of, how those folks ended up in the trailer spaces, not in a bad way, but just life experience. Like, does that, Robert, is that something that, gets into your head? Like, I'd like to know
Really?
what happened to those three kids.
Good. We were
Yes,
just worried about you.
it does go. It does make me curious about what's happened. Before I started re-looking and revisiting the images that I took, I thought, yeah, I already done it. What am I going to do? I'm going to go take pictures of the same mobile home parks. But
Yeah.
then when I started looking at the images again, this was in 2016.
Huh?
I start thinking
I'm
about
I'm
the
back on.
growth of the children and the people that are in these parks. And I would like to see them again and see the progress that they've made and the aging process. Does their lifestyle make them age at a different rate than we or other people age
Mm,
at? You know,
that's
because they don't have the easiest life in the world. Now, if you compare the mobile home park life compared to what else is going on in this world, they don't have it so badly when you start thinking about Ukraine and the Middle East. But when you start thinking about New York City and California, Beverly Hills, California, and I didn't go into the mobile home parks in California that are $1 million home, that are magnificent. These are the lesser affluent um, homes, but even the exploration and doing a comparison between those parks and the very, very affluent parks, that could be an interesting piece of work too.
yeah, and like what Margo did, getting their words, doing video, doing some interviews of those folks could be a nice ingredient to that video that you had already put together,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And same thing, Liam, right? I mean, hearing some of the stories of those working class folks,
Mm.
um, it has got to be intriguing. I mean, there's got to be some great characters in there, with how they ended up there, how this is their special beach.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, though, I'm a photographer. That's what I
Yeah,
do.
yeah. Mm,
That's really
yeah,
what I do. And so that I filmmaking and writing, and I just want to take pictures. That's what I want
right.
to do. So,
There you go.
and the thing is, I don't know where one would show that to make that work. I mean, if you put it in a gallery, you can't put it in a book. Like, where would that actually live? That effort. I don't know. Other than it tells, I guess, gives more context to
Yeah.
the photography, right?
Yeah, I mean, it depends what the purpose is. Is it just for your website? Is it more documentarian work? That gets, you have to decide if you want to go there. But like you say, I take photographs, I shoot photos, I
Yeah.
shoot people. That's what I want to do, and it's perfect. If anyone else has any questions, you could either put them in the chat room or just speak up or raise your hand, or now would be the time to do that. One other thing I have to say, I really appreciate that everyone kept to just about their time limit, because usually that doesn't happen. I can reference Bruce Byers on that, being that he's not. Uh, and don't tell him I said it. Uh,
Ooh, too late.
Frank, Bruce is actually with us.
Tell
He's
me
in the
what
chat room.
what were
oh,
what were you
shit.
trying to tell me?
I was saying, Bruce, no one does a better
Give me
presentation
give me a
than you.
moment. No, I'd like to talk to you about something that could take about 2 or 3 hours. If you just everybody here now, we could just talk. We just keep
That's
it.
fine. Happy New Year, Bruce. No, but seriously, if anyone has any questions now, now would be the time to just jump in or put it in the chat room. But I can't thank you, the three of you, for these presentations, and all of them lend themselves to come back to tell us more about them as it evolves. So that's a standing invitation, to come back. I would, we would love that. That. Em and Liam, must be your third or fourth time, I think.
I
So
think it's my fifth time, Frank.
is that right?
Yeah.
Talk about
I know I
talking.
shouldn't tell you that because you probably won't want me to present.
No, no.
Enough.
Anytime you have good, work you want to show, it's open. So again, I thank everyone for coming in. We started off the new year spectacularly with the three of you. So just thank you very, very much for that. And like I said, on the 29th, we have Stephen Shames, who's really a great, great photographer. He's got images of the Black Panthers and Angela Davis from way back when. Really got some stunning work. And then February 5th, we have this suppliers night where we'll have people who are in the industry, who have services that everyone could use for their functioning well as a photographer, galleries and apps for estimating and a number of different things. So that should be a fun night, but that's later on in February. So with that, again, I thank you all for coming in, and here's to making sure that Lisa feels better and recovers quickly. Linda, thanks for coming in.
Thank
I
you.
know you were doing something else. And Jamie, again, thanks to everyone. I really appreciate you coming in, and all the new folks. If you haven't, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's always a big help for us. So with that, it's good night.